Our story begins as the night falls and mysterious lights illuminate the streets between the sky-scraping buildings. A van speeds down the road as urgent news reports a regrettable event. The Korean hunters who challenged a 6-star gate have failed and were rescued by the Japanese. Because of this, the internet erupted with negative comments about the incompetence of the local heroes. Inside the vehicle, one of the agents complains that the Japanese make more money, even though the rivalry is a thing of the past. Then, a colleague tries to cheer up the team, saying they still need to have faith in the rescue team's rookies. But a man named Seo-yeol, the leader of the rescue department, is quiet, just looking at his phone. Without looking away from his device, he says that's a problem for the other hunters to worry about. Just then, another agent asks them to focus on the emergency call and complains that the leader is too by the book. The same man keeps grumbling that all guild hunters are the same, and his team is the one that has to pick up the slack. Seo-yeol just listens to the typical complaint of a public servant, thinking about their current situation. They are the Bureau Hunters, an organization made up mostly of mid-level awakened beings. This organization is divided into 3 different departments: athletes, supervision, and finally rescue. Within this system, the protagonist's job is to be a rescue hunter, saving civilians and other heroes. The young man's main role, then, is to use his special abilities to find people in danger. His eyes glow with an intense aura as he prepares to use his power once more. Seo-yeol's main function is to be a seeker, locating anyone who needs help inside the gates. Outside an orange gate, the rescue team prepares for another dangerous mission. One of the team leaders then claps his hands and asks for everyone's attention to give the instructions. He announces they're going in to rescue members of the Epic Guild and tells them to stay alert. Just as they were about to enter, an older man appears and greets them mockingly. One of the agents gets annoyed with the man's tone and complains about his audacity in speaking to them that way. This gentleman is Baek Jun-won, an executive from the major guild called Overcross, one of the most powerful. He is known for forcing smaller partner guilds into dangerous gates without thinking about the consequences. By doing this, the old man makes a lot of money, regardless of whether people make it through the process or not. Ignoring the man, the agent says they are in a hurry and asks to be excused so they can pass. Baek, however, offers help from his guild and asks if they are sure they don't need assistance. At that, Seo-yeol replies that this whole mess is his fault, and yet he's still trying to improve his guild's reputation. The protagonist faces the executive and states that they handle their own affairs and don't need any help. Baek Jun-won then laments the refusal and just watches the rescue team approach the gate. The old man gives a malicious little smile as he watches them enter the dangerous gate. Inside the gate, a heavy rain falls on a forest, and someone shouts for a friend not to give up. A healer tries to save her partner, telling him the emergency signal has been sent and rescue will arrive. But she begs her friend to hang on as 2 terrible monsters approach from behind them. The girl then turns around and is completely terrified to see the creatures ready to attack. One of the beasts raises its huge claw and prepares to finish off the poor young woman. Hopeless, the healer closes her eyes and just waits for her tragic end in that dungeon. Suddenly, something zips by at high speed and strikes one of the monsters that was in the way. Seo arrives with a bang, using his electric spear to zap the creature that was threatening them. The protagonist then stands in front of the pair to shield them from the bodies of the beasts falling to the ground. Turning to the girl, he asks if she's okay after the scare she just went through. With a confident smile on his face, the young man announces that the rescue has finally arrived to save them. One of his teammates then appears, shouting the protagonist's name with a worried look on his face. The manager warns that the path they came from is full of monsters, and they need to find another way out. At that, Seo-yeol's eyes glow as he prepares to use his searching abilities. A system window appears on the screen, informing him that his silent wave ability has been activated. With this power, the young man can focus on sound to map out the entire structure of the dungeon. The sound waves spread through the area, showing the user where the enemies and exits are. The power continues to spread, even revealing a bridge they can use to escape. Using the echoes, he can get a top-down view of the entire area and finds a new, safe path. The ability reveals a new passage, and with his eyes glowing, the protagonist prepares to guide everyone. Seo-yeol tells the manager he found a road, and the man proudly says, "That's my boy." The rescue squad leader then prepares to give the order for everyone to move quickly. With that, the entire team starts running toward the new route that Seo-yeol found. While being carried, the rescued girl asks if they are sure this is the right way. The manager then replies that their seeker might just be a D-rank hunter. But he assures her that the young man's abilities are the best in the country, so there's no reason to worry. The man remembers saying that with great confidence, but soon a monster appears to ruin everything. Another powerful hunter appears at the front and takes down one of the creatures to clear a path for the team. The manager then yells, asking if this path is really safe, as more and more monsters appear. Amid the chaos, the other hunters fight bravely to protect the survivors from the monsters. Another agent also strives to protect the rescued girl with his blue energy sword. Seo-yeol, on the other hand, clears a path with his spear and confirms that this way leads to the exit. But he realizes something is wrong, because the monsters know exactly where they are going. The situation gets even more complicated when the protagonist realizes a necromancer is controlling everything. At that moment, his sixth sense kicks in, and he's sure someone is nearby controlling the gulls. Suddenly, a staff hits the ground, and a large wave of purple energy spreads throughout the area. A magic circle then emerges from the ground, trapping all the hunters inside an energy barrier. The manager is startled by the trap and wonders what that purple magic that has trapped them is. Seo-yeol then shouts desperately to his friends, warning them that it's a powerful spell. He immediately orders everyone to get out of the magic circle as fast as they can to escape. Hidden in the shadows, the necromancer watches everything with his bandaged hands and a smile on his face. The magic then begins to push the hunters back, making it difficult for everyone to flee the area. Seeing that he won't make it out, the manager yells for Seo-yeol to forget him and run to save himself. The man is then struck by an unseen attack and ends up being thrown far away from the team. While flying backward, the squad leader just watches the young hunter, unable to do anything. The protagonist is also caught by the magic and is trapped in mid-air, unable to move freely. A system window notifies him that his speed has been restricted, and the young man grinds his teeth in anger. But even while trapped, he shouts for his friend to hang on, that he'll get him out of there no matter what. The manager, however, tells the young man not to come any closer because the situation is too dangerous. He then sacrifices himself and tells the kid to grab the others and get out of there as fast as possible to survive. With a sad and determined look, the man prepares for the worst as he says goodbye to his friend. Seeing his leader sacrifice, the protagonist becomes furious and clenches his teeth tightly. The manager then apologizes to the young hunter, knowing there's nothing more that can be done. Seo-yeol, however, tells him not to act like it's already over because he's not going down today. Surrounded by goals inside the magic circle, the protagonist prepares to fight with everything he has. He then stares into the void and asks if the enemy was just toying with them from the beginning. With his eyes glowing an intense golden color, the young man stares fixedly at the dungeon boss. The dungeon boss then reveals himself, and his name is Caracal, a powerful and frightening necromancer. The villain says that was the plan, but he was surprised he was so good at running and knew the temple. With a confident smile, Seo-yeol says that maybe he'll tell his secret if the necromancer lets him live. The villain then agrees to the proposal but prepares a dark spell in his hand to attack the young man. Caracal says he will turn the young man into a ghoul as a dark energy pins his feet to the ground. The curse travels up the protagonist's body and begins to corrupt his hand with the enemy's magic. A system window warns that he has been cursed and his life is rapidly decreasing because of it. In his final moments, the manager wonders if he bluffed for nothing, and if calling for help would have saved him. But he remembers he couldn't do that because guild hunters only care about money. A memory of a defeated monster flashes in his mind as he thinks about the past. He recalls when he was a child and a great hero saved him amidst a lot of destruction. That man apologized to the boy for not being able to save everyone on that tragic day. The hunter cried in front of the boy, and that image marked the young man's life forever. Ever since then, CEO wanted to be like that bureau hunter, a hero who protects the weak. That's why he shouts that he can't be finished here and activates 3 of his strongest skills at once. With that, a wave of golden energy explodes from his body, and his senses are heightened to the max. His perception spreads throughout the dungeon, and he can quickly see every detail of the place. The protagonist then starts looking for anything that can help him get out of that situation. He searches for any chance of survival and finds something glowing at the end of a corridor. His eye glows intensely as he focuses on a specific object that could be his only salvation. He finds a strange glowing monument and wonders why only that stone is like that. Looking closer, the young man sees that the stone is cracked and covered in glowing ancient runes. A system window appears and informs him that he has accessed records of a secret class, leaving him shocked. Seeing the young man's desperation, the necromancer realizes he's fighting until his last second of life. Caracal then says he will end his suffering and orders his monsters to attack with full force. The ghouls advance on the hunter, who is trapped in the magic circle and surrounded on all sides. Another window appears asking if he wants to change his class to the secret class, Labyrinth Architect. As he thinks about the offer, one of the monsters strikes the ground right next to him with great force. Another creature seizes the chance and lunges with a red energy attack to finish off the young man. With a determined look, Seo-yeol decides he has nothing left to lose and makes his final decision. He then shouts with all his might that he accepts the offer to change his class immediately. The system confirms the mission, and in the same instant, a new energy explodes from where the monument was. A system window announces that the tutorial will begin, and Seo-yeol is surprised by the light surrounding him. The world around him shatters into digital cubes and transports him to a completely new place. Suddenly, a monster's foot with sharp claws stumps on the ground, showing that the danger is still present. Caracal is furious and confused about what just happened right in front of him, not understanding a thing. The necromancer then wonders where the wretch went after disappearing right in the middle of the fight. Elsewhere, Seo-yeol looks at his new profile and sees that the class change mission is in progress. He notices his old class is gone and wonders if he has reawakened with different powers. Looking around, the young man starts to understand what that mysterious and dark place he appeared in is. With this, he confirms that the place is the tutorial zone for his new, powerful secret class. The hunter then opens the system window to check the details of his first mission in the area. The mission is to take down 20 ghouls in 24 hours to become a labyrinth architect. The protagonist understands the rest, but wonders what exactly this mission map function is. Suddenly, a holographic map appears in front of him, leaving the young hunter quite surprised. He looks at the 3-dimensional map and comments that it's surprisingly easy to read and understand. Analyzing the map, the young man realizes that the green dot in the center represents his current location in the labyrinth. The map shows the entire structure of the place and several other red dots scattered throughout the corridors. Looking closer, the young man concludes that the red dots must be the ghouls he needs to hunt. He understands how it works and realizes he needs to use the map to hunt all the monsters in one day. The young man says this might seem crazy, but for a seeker like him, the mission is totally possible. With a small smile on his face, he gets ready to start the hunt and complete the system's challenge. His eyes glow with power as he confidently says that he's ready to start fighting. The camera then pulls back, showing the dark and sinister corridor he will have to explore alone. Suddenly, a ghoul with sharp teeth and red eyes appears, roaring, ready to attack. But the hunter is faster and attacks the creature with his blue energy spear without a second's hesitation. After a while, his level increases, and only 4 ghouls are left with 30 minutes on the clock. Tired, the young man realizes he needs to hunt much faster to complete the mission on time. He thinks the tutorial was smooth, and he even picked up a makeshift weapon from one of the monsters. After that, the young man used his map ability to find and track all the goals. With his energy spear, he managed to reduce the number of creatures scattered throughout the labyrinth. He was confident he would finish on time until he saw a strange guy start to follow him. Luckily, this stronger monster travels alone, but the protagonist is still very worried. He doesn't know how long it will take to hunt the creature, nor is there any guarantee he can win. So, if he really has to face it, he needs to hunt the others quickly to have time to fight. With this new plan in mind, the young hunter runs through the corridors in search of the remaining gulls. Suddenly, one of the creatures needed to complete the mission appears in front of him to fight. The young man is startled by its appearance but thanks the monster for coming here to meet its end alone. But as the creature approaches, the protagonist realizes that more monsters have appeared right behind it. With an ironic smile, he calls the beast sneaky for teaming up to attack him. To his surprise, all the remaining gulls have appeared, and he doesn't know when they gathered. He regrets having rushed and not checking the map, which led him to this bad scenario. He tries to calm down to review his plan and remembers he can only handle 2 monsters at a time. Therefore, he needs to get out of there, but since he's blocked on all sides, he'll have to fight his way out. No matter how much he thinks about the situation, the only conclusion is that he's at a dead end. The scene is like a chess game where he is in checkmate, with no chance of escaping the danger. The young man starts to break into a cold sweat and wonders if this is the limit for a D-rank hunter like him. But he finds the situation strange and remembers that this is a tutorial for a new, strong class. So he yells for the system to give him something he can use to survive the unfair challenge. Once again, his 3 main abilities are activated to help him in the desperate battle. The hunter then challenges the monsters, shouting for them to try and take him down if they think they can. The system informs him that he has discovered a rotation block through the linking of his abilities. With a surprised look, the protagonist doesn't understand what that new function does or how to use it. A holographic hand then appears and points to a part of the map with the word rotate next to it. He's still confused by the new ability, but a wall behind him begins to glow intensely. At that moment, the creatures leap toward him to finally end the young man's life. On the map, the section where he was begins to rotate and completely change the structure of the labyrinth. The wall then actually rotates, taking him to a new corridor and separating him from the ferocious monsters. The creatures are confused and trapped on the other side, not understanding how the hunter vanished into thin air. Now in a safe corridor with only one goal, he understands how to use his new secret ability. With a smile on his face, the protagonist comments that this new function makes the hunt much easier. Using the block rotation, he can manipulate the labyrinth and separate the goals to hunt them. With his new strategy, the young man runs through the corridors, luring the creatures into his traps. He then attacks one of the monsters with his blue energy weapon, showing his advantage in combat. With a precise strike, the young hunter hits the creature dead on and defeats it without much difficulty. Upon being defeated, the gold dissolves into data and is mysteriously absorbed by the labyrinth wall. Seeing its ally defeated, the last creature tries to flee, running desperately down the corridor. But the protagonist uses another of his new abilities and creates an energy barrier to block the path. With nowhere to go, the monster ends up slamming into the wall that appeared out of nowhere in front of it. With the strong impact, the beast falls to the ground, vulnerable to the hunter's final attack. Now only the last goal remains, and it runs towards Seoyol for the final battle of the tutorial. The young man charges toward the creature, preparing to end the mission once and for all. With a punch charged with electricity, he strikes the monster with force, showing his great power. The impact is so strong that the creature's face deforms from the power of the protagonist's blow. Even though it's badly injured, the beast still tries to fight back and grabs the young man's arm with its sharp claw. But the hero doesn't flinch and uses his other hand to hold the monster and finish the fight for good. His eye glows intensely as he reminds the beast of his promise that he wouldn't fall here. With that, a large blast of golden energy erupts from his body and strikes the creature head on. He shouts that he wouldn't be finished after coming this far and uses all his strength in the final attack. With that, the system announces that the tutorial is complete and his class has changed to Labyrinth Designer. Back in the real world, the rain continues to fall and one of his teammates shouts in desperation. The team members argue with a police officer because they want to go back to rescue the section chief. The agent with glasses then yells that the gate is gone and asks how they plan to find Seoyol. Suddenly, the protagonist appears eating a popsicle and calmly asks what's going on. He walks in the rain with an umbrella and asks the team why they are so worked up. Everyone is in shock to see him and points at the young man, not believing he's alive and well. With a smile on his face, he offers the team ice cream and tells them they should get going. Sometime later, on a normal day, the protagonist is on a busy street watching the people. He then activates one of his new abilities, and the system announces that he is creating a sphere. The sphere is a power that traps opponents in a labyrinth, and he intends to use it outside of gates. The description says he can enter and exit the labyrinth, but enemies who escape become stronger. Since the sphere is invisible, it would be easy to trap enemies, but he needs to be very careful when using it. To survive, he needs to fill his labyrinth with strong monsters to increase its durability. And the only way to do that is by taking down enemies inside the labyrinth to activate the King of the Labyrinth ability. Finally, to achieve all this, the protagonist knows he needs to get even stronger as well. At that moment, a girl pulls him out of his thoughts and asks what he's thinking about so deeply. The young woman's name is Yan Hee, and she offers an apple to the young man, who seems a bit distracted by the situation. He asks if she's coming back from the store, and the young woman explains that her mom asked her to bring the fruit to him. The hero is surprised by the amount, but the girl says it's a token of affection from 5 years of being neighbors. As they walk together, the hunter then asks the young woman how school life is going. The question seems to make the girl a bit uncomfortable, and she looks away with a sad face. Eating an apple, he comments that school life is always the same, but she doesn't seem to agree much. Suddenly, they hear a shout, and a desperate woman screams for someone to let her in. 2 police officers hold back the lady who is begging for her daughter, who is in danger somewhere. The woman yells that the child is still inside a room at a luxury hotel right in front of them. Looking at the building, the protagonist notices there's no fire and suspects a dungeon break. This phenomenon happens when a gate is neglected, and the monsters manage to escape from it. He then apologizes to Yaun He and gives back the apples because he needs to handle the situation. The young man explains that he needs to go to work for the rescue department and gets ready for action. Near the hotel, police officers try to control the crowd and keep everyone away from the danger zone. But the hero tries to cross the caution tape, and one of the guards stops him from entering the area. To get through, he shows his rescue department ID and introduces himself to the officer. The guard is surprised but warns that the other rescue members will arrive soon, but he's going in first. Desperate, the police officer tries to stop the young man again, saying he can't do it alone. He warns that a group of red goblins is inside the hotel, which is why it's so dangerous. The protagonist replies that's exactly why he needs to get in there as quickly as possible. He reminds the guard that the woman said there was a child inside, and the officer confirms the story. Since the guild hunters haven't arrived, he says that at the very least, he needs to go in to help with the rescue. The young man then tells the guard not to worry because in the first place, he's not in there alone. Entering the hotel, he thinks that the gate should have been cleared by the Handwool Guild, which is responsible for the area. People trust the guilds, but in reality, they don't care about gates that aren't profitable. Because of this, dungeon breaks happen at weak gates and result in tragedies like this one. His sixth sense kicks in, and he tells the monsters to stop hiding because he wants to test something. At that moment, one of the goblins charges at high speed to attack the hunter with everything it has. Several of the red monsters jump from their hiding spots and surround the protagonist on all sides. With a little smile on his face, he comments that this is typical goblin behavior in a battle. Then, the young man activates his ability and creates a blue energy sphere right in front of the creatures. The sphere transforms into a large black hole that begins to suck all the monsters inside. The creatures are confused and, without understanding anything, are pulled forcefully into the mysterious portal. One by one, the goblins are dragged away by the ability and disappear inside Suyol's labyrinth. From a distance, the hero just watches his new technique working perfectly against the enemies. He thinks that his old self would have hesitated, but now the situation is very different from before. But now the hunter is in complete control, and a large eye watches the monsters trapped in his labyrinth. With a confident smile, he declares himself the master of the labyrinth and says the real show begins now. Inside the labyrinth, a one-star monster of the red goblin race appears to fight. This species moves around its leader and is generally not much different from a common goblin. However, there's a small difference between them that makes them much more dangerous than the others. This difference is that red goblins hunt intelligently and use battle tactics. With that, the red creatures prepare to attack the labyrinth monster in an ambush. But the protagonist, watching from the outside, says that's not going to happen in his domain. Using his architect power, he creates a wall and separates the goblins that were trying to attack together. The group's leader then slams into the wall that appeared out of nowhere and is left confused by the situation. The other monsters are also thrown back, and their ambush strategy fails completely. The young man realizes they tried to trick him and comments that they're already getting used to the labyrinth. He thinks it's good that the monsters hunt alone, but since more goblins have been lured in, he needs to keep an eye on them. The hunter then challenges them to try to trick him again, because it will be useless against him anyway. After all, inside his labyrinth, it's the red goblins that will be hunted, not the other way around. Meanwhile, in the real world, the hero continues his search for the child on the hotel's 17th floor. He finds the little girl hiding and crying in fear in a room and asks if she is Somi. With a gentle smile, he tells her not to worry because he's already taken care of everything to save her. The protagonist then takes the little girl's hand and leads her safely out of the room at last. She asks if he defeated the goblins by himself, and the young man confirms it as the monsters he captured have been dealt with. He thinks it was a good move because the goblins were using scent to find hidden humans. If he hadn't gone up quickly, they would have found the little girl before he could save her. The door to Somi's hiding place was all scratched up, showing that the monsters almost got her. Suddenly, the hero receives an alert on his system about a problem with his personal labyrinth. The warning says that more than half of the monsters guarding the labyrinth have been wiped out inside. He tells Somi that the elevator is working and she can go down, but the girl has a question. With a gentle smile, the young man explains that he needs to get the last monster that was left behind. After saying goodbye, he realizes that the leader of the red goblins was causing trouble. Inside the labyrinth, the red goblin king is destroying all the monsters that were guarding the place. He thinks about making them fight, but if the labyrinth boss loses, the situation could get complicated. Since he needs to check something in there, he decides to go in personally to solve the problem for good. The protagonist then enters a portal and goes straight to his labyrinth for the big battle. Arriving there, he's impressed by the destruction the Goblin King has caused in such a short time. He tells the monster to stop bothering his guardians and prepares for the upcoming fight. With a snap of his fingers, he uses his power to raise a wall and separate the Goblin King from the boss. The monster is then trapped in a corridor, face to face with the hero who calls him out for a fight. Seeing the human, the Goblin King becomes furious and charges with his flaming weapon to attack. He shouts that he will finish the intruder and swings his spear to try to end the young man quickly. but the hero easily dodges the attack and prepares to counter-attack with all his strength. The hunter moves with incredible speed and manages to get past the monster's defense without any problems. He feels his body is light and realizes he's at the level he reached after awakening as a designer. With his stats much higher, he feels he is very different from who he was before the class change. The Goblin King gets angry at the opponent's speed and tries to attack him again with his flaming weapon. He had thought about testing his skills, but now he thinks he can handle the situation on his own. The hero then prepares for battle and once again dodges the powerful blow of the red enemy. With a swift move, he lands a punch on the Goblin King's face and sends him flying with the impact. The monster is thrown against the wall, and the young man uses his power to create another wall to trap the beast. With no way out, the creature tries to use an energy attack, but the protagonist is faster and stops it. The hunter then lands a red energy punch to the monster's stomach with all his might. With this final blow, the Goblin King is defeated, and the protagonist wins the battle inside his labyrinth. The punch sends the hero flying, but he lands safely in the labyrinth's corridor. With agility, the protagonist balances himself and faces the Goblin King with a very challenging look. He thanks the monster for throwing him back on purpose and asks a taunting question. The young man then asks if the beast can even swing its sword after that blow. Since the situation resolved itself, he realizes he can now check on something else important. With a smile, he provokes the Goblin King, asking where all his previous strength is gone. The hero says he invested 2 million in him, and it would be a problem if he were already tired. He continues the taunt, saying that the king of a horde should put on a worthy display. Pretending to think, the young hunter suggests a possibility for the monster's sudden weakness. He then asks with a mocking tone if the mighty Goblin King is scared of him. Completely enraged, the monster readies its flaming sword for a devastating attack. The creature shouts that it will take him down, and the young man says he needs to show the investment was worth it. With a serious look, the protagonist says he really wanted to see that through the red monster. Without hesitation, the creature runs at high speed toward the hero for the final confrontation. But on the floor, metal chains begin to emerge, preparing for a deadly trap. The hero has prepared an inescapable repulsion device for anyone inside his labyrinth. The chains bind the monster, and large spikes fall from the ceiling, striking it directly. With a small smile on his face, the protagonist then says goodbye to the defeated Goblin King. The system confirms that the spike ceiling trap was successfully activated by the user. After the attack, the room is empty, and only the chains of the deadly trap remain in the area. Next to the spikes, the young man observes the result of his first trap set up in the labyrinth. He sees that it cost 20 gold and concludes that the traps are well worth the investment. With a smile, the young hunter is satisfied because the performance of his traps is reliable. With the victory, he levels up, and the horde of red goblins is incorporated into the labyrinth. Back at the hotel, the protagonist leaves the building looking tired but with the mission accomplished. Suddenly, he hears someone calling his name and turns to see who it is. The section chief appears and asks what the heck he was doing in that place alone. The manager asks if it's true that he took care of the goblins and worries about his injuries. The young man lies, saying he doesn't remember, and the chief complains that he's been very forgetful lately. A man with gray hair then interrupts them and asks if they are from the rescue department. The man introduces himself as Kwon Sung-soon, the section chief representing the Hanwoo Guild. The rescue squad manager then agrees to talk to him about the incident that occurred. Kwon thanks them for their cooperation in resolving the dungeon break, but the manager is confused. Without beating around the bush, the guild leader gets straight to the point and makes a rather suspicious request. He asks them not to give interviews to reporters about what happened at the hotel. Kwon explains that the guild doesn't want the matter to spread, and that they will compensate for the damages. The man also promises to sponsor the management bureau to ensure everyone's silence. The protagonist realizes this is how they silence people but admits that he's not wrong. After all, the bureau hunters are weak, while those from the guilds can reach up to S rank. That's why people trust the guilds more to protect them from the threats of gates and monsters. The actions of the guilds that exploit this trust anger him, but he knows he can't do anything alone. But to Kwon's surprise, the protagonist shakes his hand and says he understands the situation perfectly. With a smile, he says he had no intention of exaggerating, and that he gains nothing from more attention. However, with a mischievous look, he comments that he would feel wronged if it ended like this. He says he will have to keep cleaning up the guild's messes, and for that, he needs compensation. To everyone's amazement, the young hunter asks for 10 billion as a sponsorship for his department. The protagonist stares at Kwon and asks with a threatening tone if he can do that for them. After the incident, the hero is seen running in a park to keep himself in shape. He then stops at a bench to rest and have a cold drink after an intense workout. After the hotel incident, the young man got 2 days of vacation as a well-deserved reward. Besides handling everything on his own, he also managed to squeeze money out of the guild and was quite happy. The only problem is that his teammates are now looking at him in a strange way. But he decides not to tell the truth, because if they find out he reawakened, things could get annoying. For now, he decides to focus on managing his labyrinth and strengthening his new powers and abilities. The young man learns that fixing the labyrinth walls and reviving monsters costs the hunter's currency. It's convenient that the labyrinth doesn't have its own currency, but the problem is that everything is very expensive. The total cost of repairs is 53 gold, which is almost double his monthly salary. But since he has already saved up 80 gold, he decides he needs to make at least this investment. While relaxing in the park, he prepares for the next step, but his phone suddenly starts ringing. He wonders why she is calling him on his day off and answers the call. He answers gruffly and tells the surveillance department and its lackey to get straight to the point. The woman on the other end of the line says it's good he's on vacation because he has plenty of time. She then asks the young man to find someone for her and introduces herself as Lee Jung-ai from the surveillance department. Without giving him time to respond, she continues the call but realizes the hunter has gone silent. Annoyed, she asks if he's still on the line and realizes the young man hung up on her. Hanging up the call, the hero thinks he doesn't need to revive all the monsters to save gold, and if necessary, it would be faster for him to enter the labyrinth himself to solve the problems. But if he really has to revive the monsters, the cost would be very high and would leave him in a bind. He gets annoyed with the call and complains that she should figure out how to find the person herself. She begs and says she'll buy him meat, and that when he finds out who it is, he'll want to look for him. The woman then reveals that the person she needs to find is named Kangtizan, a very famous name. Upon hearing the name, the young man goes silent for a moment and admits he would like to see him at least once. With a confident smile, he says that a person of his caliber would be very easy to find. Near a kiosk in the park, some elderly people are playing a board game while discussing the moves. One of the gentlemen complains that the other made a bad move, and the old man who lost gets annoyed with the situation. The man who lost then says he's going to stop playing, and the other complains that he's a grumpy old man. From a distance, the protagonist watches everything and feels a powerful aura coming from one of the old men. The dark red aura he feels is something only the most powerful awakened beings possess. Putting the aura aside, he wonders if that old man is really the person he's looking for. He finds the man very different from the image he had in mind, and one of the gentlemen calls him over to talk. The elderly man asks if he knows how to play, and the young man replies that he plays a little and comes closer to look. With a piece of advice, he points to the board and suggests a move to help the old man win. Suddenly, his sixth sense activates and he feels danger approaching very quickly from behind. The game piece he touched is thrown with force and narrowly misses his head. The piece hits a tree, and the other elderly men are startled by the force of the man's throw. The old man then stands up and says he can ignore someone approaching with bad intentions. With that, the protagonist realizes his concerns were in vain and that this is indeed who he's looking for. He is one of Korea's 5 S-rank hunters, one of the most powerful and respected in the country. The man is a hunter who can turn anything he holds into a deadly weapon. And with his red aura, he introduces himself as Kangtizan, the weapon master and S-rank hunter. But the man turns and shouts to another person approaching, calling him master. The woman named Jung-ai then runs toward them with a very worried expression on her face. The weapon master then asks the young woman if she happens to be from the surveillance department. Answering his phone, CEO replies that he is just a scout from the rescue department. The young man dodges an attack from the old man and brags that having many talents is his flaw. At that, the weapon master comments that he would be fine if he weren't so talkative and cocky. The young woman then arrives and asks where he was, as everyone has been looking for him for a while. She informs him that the trainees are gathered and they need to go back immediately, and the old man agrees. Curious, the woman asks how the protagonist managed to find someone that even they couldn't track. With a thumbs up, he says it's because he's very capable and that his job here is done, so he's leaving. But the weapon master calls him an arrogant brat and stops him from leaving the place. The man then recognizes that he is a hunter from the administration and tells him to follow. He says he wants to test the young man's smart mouth and takes him to a very large and modern building. A narration explains that all awakened beings have their own maximum power capacity. This means that no matter how much a C-rank hunter tries, he will never surpass that level. However, the system can't define everything, as martial arts cannot be measured by numbers. In other words, you can get stronger depending on your skill with a specific weapon. With his sword glowing, he swings the weapon and says that is the reason they are here today. The scene then shifts to a room full of administration hunters sitting in a kind of dojo. In the midst of everyone, the protagonist only thinks that he wants to go home to check on his labyrinth. A man calls one of the students and asks how long he has been training, and he replies 4 months. Jung-ai then comments that this veteran is one of the few B-rank hunters in the department. The instructor praises the young man and says he has potential, which is why he is here in front of everyone. The man then says he wants to ask him just one question to test his knowledge and skills. The weapon master holds his sword and asks what he thinks is necessary to use it. The student answers confidently that he believes raw strength and an understanding of skills are needed. The master, however, remains silent and seems not to have liked the answer from his apprentice very much. He then turns to the protagonist and asks the arrogant brat what he thinks about the matter. Without much thought, the young man replies that he believes the most important thing is the will to use the weapon. The other students are confused and think the other answer was better, wondering who this guy is. The master then questions the answer and asks if the young man is sure of what he just said. But Seo confirms without hesitation and thinks that, as expected, an S-rank hunter is very perceptive. With that, Tazen grabs him by the arm and says his attitude makes him a very arrogant person. However, to everyone's surprise, he reveals that it was the correct answer to the question asked. The protagonist is a little confused by the situation and says thank you, while the other student becomes furious. The veteran then grinds his teeth in anger for being outdone by a rookie in front of the master. He shouts that he doesn't accept a guy who isn't even a trainee being there in the first place. The hero wonders why the other guy is acting this way over a simple question. The master explains that anyone qualified can be there and proposes a test for the 2 young men. He says they need to prove their answers in the challenge and asks if they both accept the proposal. The other student shouts that he accepts immediately, but the protagonist tries to refuse the old man's offer. At that, the master says he will choose the other guy and asks if the young man is sure of his decision. He then reveals the grand prize of passing the test means becoming his direct disciple. The young man is shocked at the thought of the opportunity to be the disciple of such a strong S-rank hunter. Besides getting stronger, this is a unique chance to achieve a high position in the hierarchy. With a smile, the master then asks if the boy is feeling a little more motivated now. The young hunter remains silent for a moment and thinks about the great hunter's whole proposal. He then clenches his fist tightly and makes a decision about what he will do next in the test. With a determined smile, the protagonist says he is more than motivated enough to fight. The scene then shifts to the large testing arena where the battle of the two young men will take place. The master explains that the test is simple and they need to use his ability to break the stone. Whoever wins will become his disciple, and with that, the two young men prepare for the great challenge. The protagonist is thoughtful about the ether stone they need to destroy to win the contest. This is a rock with magical power found in temples, and only the strongest can break it. He doesn't understand about the so-called ability, and the other student is already preparing for the big test. But the young man decides it doesn't matter because the crowd is already cheering, and the fight will start soon. With a determined look, he thinks that this is a great opportunity, and that he will make it his. The master then approaches and says he will now pass his ability to the two competitors. He warns that if they feel nothing in the process, they fail, and the veteran confirms he understood everything. With everything ready, the weapon master finally gives the signal for the start of the disciple test. Suddenly, a huge blast of red aura erupts from the master and hits both competitors head-on. The system announces that the weapon master's aura has been detected, and the veteran can barely breathe. He feels like he's going to pass out at any moment, but at the same time, he starts to see something different. The protagonist then has a vision of a bright and powerful spear under the moonlight in a garden. The weapon glows with an intense blue light and dissolves into energy particles in front of him. The system announces that he has acquired mastery of the Dragon King's spear, and the master watches everything. He says that judging by their expressions, they both definitely have an aptitude and can be proud of it. Tazen explains that usually people either feel nothing or pass out the moment they receive the power. With a smile on his face, the weapon master prepares for the next part of the young men's test. Looking at the two competitors, he then asks which of them will prove themselves first in the challenge. Without wasting time, the other student grabs his greatsword and prepares to show his strength. With a loud shout, he charges forward and infuses his weapon with red energy for the first strike. The veteran then shouts that he will be the first and that he will crush his opponent's will to fight. Seo yawns and says he suspected him ever since he entered the dojo with the master for the test. The other guy doesn't know how a D rank endured the transfer but thinks he bribed someone. With that, he shouts with all his might that all he needs to do is prove his worth with power. The sword strikes the other stone head-on, causing a huge explosion of red energy in the room. Jungai is shocked to see the stone break so easily and wonders why he is in the bureau. The master then comments that he has mastered the Dragon King's swordsmanship and that the result was not bad at all. After the first student's demonstration, the weapon master walks toward the protagonist. The veteran then taunts him, saying that a rookie like him shouldn't try to steal a senior spot. With a small smile, the young man replies that no one can live if they're always walking on eggshells. The master interrupts them and tells them to save the stare down for later, as it's now the rookie's turn. He thinks the other's tone annoyed him, but he admits the guy is stronger in terms of raw power. But now it's not just about strength, it's a test to prove that his own answer is the right one. Besides, he remembers that the master himself said the answer he gave was the correct one. He thinks about the will to wield a weapon and that, although it's a vague answer, it is his answer. So he delves deeper into his thoughts and asks himself why he wields a weapon to fight. At that moment, a memory of one of his battles flashes in his mind, and the answer is already set. He fights to become like the person who saved him in the past and inspired him to be a great hero. He wants other people to feel the same hope he felt when he was saved in the past. That's why he became a bureau hunter, and to achieve his goal, he needs something. The young man knows he needs to become much stronger than he is to be able to protect everyone. With that, he uses his ability and unleashes a powerful dragon fire piercing attack. Upon seeing the power of the blow, everyone in the audience is left with their mouths open in disbelief. The weapon master, however, just watches the result of the test with a very serious look. The veteran who challenged him is in shock and wonders what kind of absurd power that was. The other stone is completely destroyed, and the protagonist apologizes to his opponent. With a new weapon in hand, he asks if the senior mind's having his spot stolen by him. Tazen explains that weapons are tools, and that you need to know yourself to use their full power. With that, the master points at him and declares that from this day on, the young man is his new disciple. With a smile of satisfaction on his face, the protagonist thanks him for the great opportunity he received. The crowd then erupts in celebration and applauds the victory of the master's newest disciple. The scene then shifts to an alley, and someone complains that a girl should have shown up earlier. A bully named Jin Tae holds Yeon-hee by the hair and says this is what happens to those who disobey. Another girl sarcastically pities her classmate who ended up like this just for being a little nosy. She approaches the girl on the ground and asks if she really wanted to help her friend that much. The young woman warns her that she needs to know who she's dealing with before getting into trouble like this. Jin Tae then stares at the girl on the ground with a bruised face and a very threatening smile. The friend Yeon he was trying to help just glares at the bullies with a look of intense anger. The boy says that now she has no friends left to help her and is completely alone. He then reveals that her friend jumped from the roof and is now recovering in the hospital. Upon hearing that, the girl who is being beaten looks even more furious and determined. The bully taunts her, saying that when she looks at him like that, it makes him want something more. With a smile on his face, he kicks her and says it just makes him want to hit her non-stop. Suddenly, someone arrives and calls him young master, and Jin Tae complains that he took too long. A man with white hair appears, and the boy calls him his dear B-rank hunter. The group leader announces they are leaving and tells them to keep an eye on the girl so she doesn't run away. But the white-haired man calls him to come along, and the bully asks where they are going. With a malicious smile, Tae replies that he called in to go somewhere with no one else around. He says they're going to a place where they can have fun as much as they want, and a large purple portal appears in the city. The scene then returns to the bureau building as the sun sets on the horizon after a long day. Jung-hee comments that he did well becoming an S-ranks disciple, and that the master let him choose a weapon. She then asks if that spear is really enough, and the young man confirms it's all he needs. He says there was nothing better and shows off his new spear of evolution with a unique adaptation effect. As they walk, the protagonist complains that it's past time to leave and asks about her work. Suddenly, he stops her from entering a room, and the young woman gets annoyed, not understanding why. An elderly lady then tries to get past a security guard, begging to see Chief Seo-yeol for a moment. The guard suggests she call if it's urgent, but the woman shouts that she's there because no one is answering. At that moment, the protagonist appears, and the woman finally finds the person she was looking for. Desperate, she runs and shouts the young man's name, who asks if something is wrong with her. The woman then grabs his clothes tightly and screams Yeon, his name, with tears in her eyes. She tells him that the girl was forcibly dragged away by the bullies from the Yellow Belt gang. Upon hearing that, the young hunter's expression changes completely, and he becomes very serious and concerned. With his face red with anger, he asks who exactly was responsible for dragging the girl away. The scene then shifts to a dark forest, and a girl asks if it's safe to go this far. Tae says that's why they brought a B-rank hunter, and that they need to check something. With a smile, he wonders who would win a fight between the hunter and one of the local monsters. He tells the girl not to worry because the monsters here are weak, and the hunter would win easily. The kidnapped girl, however, just glares at him with a look of contempt and anger on her face. Suddenly, she takes advantage of a distraction and tries to run away from the bullies in the dark forest. With a smile on his face, the B-rank hunter then tells young Master Tae to capture her. The young woman runs with all her might, thinking that she doesn't want to be done for and needs to find a way to escape. But the hunter is much faster and steps on her foot to stop her from running away. He then grabs her forcefully, and the girl screams in pain as she is captured again by the man. On the ground, she cries for help, but the hunter says there's no one there to help her. Suddenly, several energy blades appear out of nowhere and fly toward the group of bullies. The hunter senses the danger and tells everyone to fall back because something is approaching very fast. A creature then attacks the group with full force, and everyone scatters in panic to avoid being caught. The monster strikes one of the henchmen, and Tae is terrified by the force of the surprise attack. The white-haired hunter then tells the young master to run while Tae is scared of the monster. With a serious look, the B-rank hunter prepares to face the creature that appeared by surprise. He then recognizes the monsters as stinghawks, a dangerous species that attacks in swarms. Elsewhere in the forest, the protagonist is on a call and thanks someone for a big favor. He then reveals that it was the chief who told him where Yan he was and appears over a defeated monster. In a memory, a man named Kang Jung-min says he was just responding to a missing person call. With a cigarette in his mouth, the man from the Vanguard department then warns him to be very careful. Back in the present, the young man says it's a little late to worry about him now. Looking at the dark forest, he comments that this is a place he would never want to live in. This area is the Yellow Belt, a place isolated after a dungeon went out of control. The monsters there aren't very strong, but they are known for being cunning and difficult to deal with. The protagonist, however, realizes that now that he's facing the creatures, they are quite weak. Stepping on one of the beasts, he thinks they seem weaker than the goblins and just use numbers. But he knows he needs to save the girl as quickly as possible and starts running through the forest. Suddenly, a drill-shaped creature flies toward him at impressive speed. With agility, the young man manages to dodge the monster's surprise attack and continues on his way. But he is surrounded by a huge swarm of creatures, and his system begins to generate his spear. With an energy sphere in his hand, he complains that he doesn't have time to deal with all these beasts. The young man then opens a portal and tells the monsters to call all the friends they can for the fight. The creatures then begin to be sucked into the protagonist's labyrinth with no chance of escape. But to his surprise, the queen of the Stinghawks appears, and she is much larger than the other monsters. With a small smile, he comments that she has a lot of friends and prepares for the battle against the boss. The queen then attacks him with her sharp claws, and the hero has to dodge the powerful blow. He runs through the forest to get away from the swarm while dodging the attacks of the flying monsters. With a leap, the protagonist uses an area of effect electric attack to zap several of the creatures at once. He then lands on the ground and realizes this situation is starting to get very dangerous for him. A system window shows the labyrinth's status, and his allied units are rapidly decreasing. He thinks that if he lures more monsters into the labyrinth, it could collapse at any moment. The young man knows he can't handle so many enemies alone and needs a new plan to win. In that case, he decides to use a new strategy and launches a quick attack toward the creatures. The protagonist says this is his last resort and prepares a water sphere with his hands. With a confident smile, he then asks if the monsters like to play in the water and gets ready. At that, a huge wave of water is fired, hitting the entire swarm of flying creatures head-on. And finally, the young hunter jumps with full force into a portal he created himself on the spot. He then shouts at full charge as he is forcefully sucked into his own labyrinth. The portal then implodes, taking all the water and monsters into his personal dimension. Inside the labyrinth, one of the insect monsters lands on the body of a defeated red goblin. The creature is then confused, not understanding where it is or what happened to the place around it. Suddenly, the monsters are thrown into the water that the hero brought with him into his labyrinth. With that, the entire labyrinth is flooded, and the creatures are trapped in the strong current of the water. Unable to fly because of the water, all the giant insects end up drowning in the flood. The young man laments because restoring the labyrinth will be a nightmare and will cost all his gold. but he gives a small smile and crushes the portal in his hand, because at least the situation is calmed down. He then looks at the now empty and silent forest and prepares to continue his search. Elsewhere, the bullies run desperately to escape the monsters chasing them. One of the henchmen complains and wonders how far those things will keep chasing them all. Jintae yells at the B-rank hunter, who says there are too many for him to handle the situation alone. The young master becomes furious and calls the hunter useless, because they are completely lost. Suddenly, a blade flies by at high speed and cuts something in the middle of the chase. The white-haired hunter defeats one of the monsters, and one of the henchmen is quite surprised. Jintae and the girl he kidnapped then get scared as they see something approaching them. One of the Stinghawks appears right in front of them, and prepares to attack with its frightening mouth. The bully then yells to the B-rank hunter that there are more monsters in front of them now. In a panic, the pair ends up cornered on a cliff edge with nowhere to run. He then grabs the girl's hair and shouts for the monster to do something to save itself. But a red energy blade appears out of nowhere and cuts the creature right in the middle of its attack. With that, the monster is sliced in two, and the attack narrowly misses the two of them. Completely shocked by the scene, the young master turns and asks who is there to save them. A voice then replies that it's a hunter from the administration, and an energy staff appears on the scene. Under the moonlight, the protagonist finally appears and asks if they are the ones who brought Yan. The bully and the girl are shocked, and the boy asks who the new hunter that appeared is. With his staff glowing, the hero introduces himself to the delinquent as a hunter from the bureau. Under the moonlight, he then asks once more if they were the ones who dragged Yan to that place. The girl then shouts, calling him sir, with a look of relief and surprise at the same time. He comforts her and asks if she's okay, commenting that it's the first time he's seen her crying like that. At that moment, Jintae calls out to him, and the protagonist turns to face the leader of the bullies. The bully offers money and demands that the hunter guide them out of this dangerous place now. The young woman, however, asks the hero to ignore him and just leave with her to a safe place. The protagonist then falls silent for a moment and apologizes to the girl, who is confused. He then lightly taps her, causing her to faint so she won't see what's about to happen next. Carefully, the young man lays her on the ground and says he'll finish things quickly to get her out. He then plants his staff in the ground and asks the bully what he thinks he's doing now. With a smile, the hero says he's about to do something he shouldn't let the girl see. Jintae becomes furious and shouts, asking if the hunter has any idea who he's talking to. The protagonist replies that he would recognize him just by looking and identifies him as the son of an important judge. He then lists the boy's crimes, such as school violence, theft, and drunk driving, among other things. The hero describes him as a guy who commits all sorts of crimes and gets away with everything using money. Without hesitation, the protagonist then moves forward and lands a powerful kick right in the delinquent's face. With the impact of the blow, the bully is completely shocked and speechless from the pain he felt. The hero holds him and asks why he doesn't try to use his money to solve the situation now. With a taunting smile, he challenges him to try and tempt him with money like he does with everyone else. He then throws him forcefully to the side, preparing for what's going to happen next in the forest. Suddenly, the B-rank hunter attacks him from behind with an energy strike to protect his master. The hero dodges the attack and comments that the hunt for the vermin is finally over for now. The white-haired hunter just glares at him with a serious look and prepares for a fight. Jintae shouts and calls him a psycho, saying it's useless to beg and to go down with the other one. The B-rank hunter then charges forward with a powerful spinning attack towards the protagonist, but the hero manages to block the blow with his staff without much difficulty, showing his strength. The impact of the weapons creates a large shockwave at the sight of the hunter's battle. The young man then says he was only going to teach him a lesson, but it seems that won't be enough now. With a serious look, the hero says they try to take him out first, so he won't go easy on them. With that, the battle begins, and the energy weapons of the two hunters clash with great force. The white-haired hunter wonders how he is being pushed back by a simple D-rank bureau hunter. He then doubts that the young man is really a hunter from the administration with all that absurd power. But he decides it doesn't matter, and if the opponent's weapon is a spear, he has a plan to win. The fight continues, and the B-rank hunter tries to get closer to gain an advantage in the battle. He then jumps over the protagonist and says he just needs to get close to cut him down and win. But as he gets closer, the hero grabs the opponent's arm and says that wasn't a good idea. With the enemy trapped, he says he has no other choice but to throw a punch to end the fight. Then, with all his strength, the protagonist lands a powerful punch right in the white-haired hunter's face. The impact is so strong that the man is thrown far away and flies through the air, unable to react. On the ground, the B-rank hunter is defeated, and Jintae shouts, asking if he bought his qualification. The protagonist then silently wonders if that guy was really a B-rank hunter. He then remembers that his stats leveled up after hunting all those wasps in the forest. With that, he realizes he has finally surpassed the level of a common B-rank hunter. With a small smile on his face, he is satisfied with his new level of power and strength. Seeing his bodyguard defeated, the bully picks up a rock and mutters about a bureau hunter. He then throws the rock and shouts, asking who the hero thinks he's laughing at right now. Without the slightest effort, the protagonist uses his staff to trip the delinquent and knock him down. With that, the boy falls face first on the ground and screams in pain from the hard impact of the fall. The hero then approaches and says that the people he tormented felt much more pain than this. The bully shouts that if he's angry, he should get power or money, because that's how the world works. As expected, the protagonist thinks that a hopeless guy like him shouldn't even exist. He then tells the boy not to worry, as he won't make him suffer as much as possible. With that, the young hunter picks up the unconscious girl in his arms to get her out of that place. He then announces that he will leave him to the hungry beasts hidden in the dark forest. The delinquent is terrified as he sees one of the creatures running toward him to attack. 3 large shadow wolves with glowing purple eyes then appear and surround the frightened boy. Completely surrounded, the bully screams desperately for the creatures not to come near him. As he screams, the boy is attacked by the beasts and his tragic fate is finally sealed in the forest. With the girl in his arms, the protagonist just watches the beasts take care of the delinquent in the forest. With that, the case of Yaon, his abduction in the yellow belt finally comes to an end. The girl is then safely returned to her family and the two embrace, crying a lot. The Vanguard chief announces that they caught the person who let the group in and that things will get noisy. The news of the incident spreads throughout the media, and the judge's son's case becomes a major scandal. To cover up the case, the delinquent's father ends up resigning from his position at the Supreme Court of Justice. After all the commotion, the young hunter's life finally returns to normal in his day. Today. Sometime later, he is in his room, and a new mission suddenly appears on his system. The mission is to defeat the Wasp Queen within 30 days to earn a dagger and 100 gold as a reward. He remembers seeing the so-called Wasp Queen when he was leaving the yellow belt on the other mission. The image of the giant monster then comes to his mind, and he is sure that is the creature. Since she is protected by other wasps, he knows it won't be an easy task to complete. But with a smile on his face, the young man says he will capture the queen for his labyrinth, no matter what. He thinks that if the normal wasps are already strong, the queen must be even more powerful. The next day, he says goodbye to his coworkers and says he needs to leave early today. But his manager stops him and asks if he's going to finish the paperwork before leaving the office. The protagonist then just stares at his boss in silence and leaves the room without answering the question. The manager is left alone in the room and just watches the young man leave through the door without saying anything more. With only a month until the end of the mission, he knows the wasps will expand their territory soon. So he goes to an ancient temple and prepares for what he needs to do to get stronger. Arriving at the location, a mysterious voice says that the young hunter is late for his appointment. The weapon master then welcomes him and tells him to come in, because his training is about to begin. The scene then shifts to the master's dojo as the sun sets on the horizon after a long day. Wearing training clothes, the young man is surprised to learn that he is now a direct disciple of the master. The old man tells him not to worry, as there are only 2 others above him in the master's dojo. With that, he takes the young man to see the training area and the other disciples who are there. One of the students named June, who says he is ready, and the master praises his disciple's good work. The protagonist then just watches the other student in silence, not understanding what is happening. The other 2 disciples are also confused by the rookie's arrival at the great master's dojo. The master then presents the jawbone of a rare and unique monster called the Iron Ghoul. The master reveals that it was the first creature that almost sent him to the other side because it was so strong. He then holds the beast's jawbone and says this will be the training the young man must complete. With a great shout of effort, the old man prepares to show his absurd strength to everyone. Using all his energy, he simply shatters the monster's jawbone with his bare hands. After the demonstration of power, he comments that the bone is still as tough as it was before. With that, the S-rank hunter drops the pieces of the broken jawbone on the dojo floor. The other disciples are impressed, and the protagonist wonders if his body is made of iron. The master then turns to the rookie and challenges him to try to do the same thing he just did. The young man prepares, thinking he is a level above a B-rank hunter and that he can do it. But he knows he won't break it completely like his master, and that he can at least apply some force. Seeing the young man's effort, the master is a bit surprised and says that this is quite unexpected. To his surprise, the protagonist can't even move the jawbone a single centimeter. The old man explains that this training will develop his strength and tells him to keep challenging himself. He also warns that there will be no other training until the young man can break that jawbone. With that, the young man is completely sweaty and stressed by the difficulty of the challenge imposed. From a distance, the other disciple watches him and thinks he only got the spot because of connections. Sometime later, the veteran named June Su walks down the dojo stairs with a thoughtful look on his face. He reflects it's been 2 years since he joined the Martial Arts Association. And in the end, the one who became a disciple wasn't him, but a guy from the administration who just arrived. He then thinks that no matter how much he reflects on it, the whole situation is very unfair. The next day, the protagonist greets him with a good morning and calls him Senior Jang Jun Su. With a smile on his face, the young man jokes that the veteran came in second place at the dojo today. Jun-Su says he left early, and the rookie replies that even on a holiday, it's good to arrive early. He then asks the veteran to speak informally, but the other guy doesn't agree with that. The young man then asks if the senior cleaned the dojo by himself because it was a bit messy before. The veteran asks him not to do that anymore because it makes others uncomfortable with the situation. The young man then asks if there's a need to divide tasks between superiors and inferiors. He says that just because he's a direct disciple doesn't mean he wants to push work onto others. With a smile, the young man turns and says that everyone there is together to succeed as hunters. The veteran, however, just stares him in silence and thinks that his whole attitude is annoying. The veteran reflects that for 2 weeks, the rookie trained non-stop, staying later than everyone else. Even though he is a direct disciple, he doesn't think he's superior and even helps with the dojo cleaning while yawning. Additionally, the young man gets along well with all the other students and jokes with them during breaks. And in his free time, he continues to train like crazy to break the monster's jawbone. Jun-Su admits that this makes him even more irritated, but deep down he feels something else too. He realizes that the rookie is exactly the type of person he has always wanted to become one day. Suddenly, the jawbone finally starts to crack under the protagonist's impressive strength. With a smile, he celebrates that he's almost there, and a colleague encourages him to keep trying. At that moment, the senior approaches and offers a bottle of water to the surprised young man. Junsu then calls him by his name and tells him not to overdo it in training so he doesn't get hurt. With a smile, the young hunter comments that it took a while for him to finally drop the formalities. The veteran then hands him the water, and the two finally start to understand each other better at the dojo. Outside, they hear the sound of a trumpet, and the senior says it's the Overcross Guild leaving. The protagonist finds it strange that they are going into a dungeon so late at night, and Junsu explains. He says that the guild works day and night because it has a lot of people, and he once worked there for a while. The scene then shifts to a forest with a bright sun illuminating the path between the trees. A group of guild hunters then enters a large purple portal for another dangerous mission. Sometime later, two of them comment that the job was faster than they expected. They then admire a large orc that has been captured and is trapped in a blue energy cage. One of them yawns and asks if capturing monsters is allowed, and the other says it usually isn't. The young man explains that if they sell that orc, they can make 12 billion, and that's how they get paid. The monster glares at the two, and one of them wonders if the orc tribe's necklace is worth any money. A close-up then shows the monster's mouth bleeding and its sharp teeth in a fit of rage. The hunter says to throw the necklace away because no one would buy trash from a monster like that. With that, the orc becomes even more furious and bares its teeth with a look of pure hatred on its face. Suddenly, the creature breaks the cage, and its eyes glow red as the two hunters get scared. Elsewhere, the protagonist and his rescue team are in front of a gate in the city. The manager then asks if they can go back to the base now that the work there is done. Seol says he's going straight to the association, and his boss invites him to a company dinner. But he declines the invitation because since the master is not at the dojo, he will take care of the other students. Suddenly, his manager shouts because of a noise and wonders what's happening now. An alert then sounds on the protagonist's communicator, requesting emergency support for all teams. The warning informs that a 3-star boss monster that was being illegally transported has escaped from captivity. And to everyone's surprise, the location of the accident is precisely the Martial Arts Association. With the dojo completely destroyed, one of the disciples wonders where that giant orc came from out of nowhere. One of the veterans then shouts for a younger female student to run, but the girl is too scared. That's because the master is in danger, and the enormous steel orc prepares to attack with all its might. Junsu is all injured but stands firm in front of the monster to protect the other students. He remembers that when he joined Overcross, he always thought of himself as a true genius among them all. The veteran convinced himself that using partner guilds as bait was a privilege of the strongest. But during a dangerous mission, he was betrayed by his comrades and ended up being left behind. And at that moment, he realized he was just another replaceable piece in that cruel guild. It was only then that he finally understood how merciless the world of hunters could be. Despite that, he didn't want to believe that the world was completely rotten and without any hope. Just like the person who saved him without saying a word, now he also wanted to help others in danger. And it was for this exact reason that he wanted to make the world a slightly better place for everyone. That's how he endured for 2 years, and now he faces the monster to protect his new friends. He can barely stand, but he needs to hold on as long as he can while the creature attacks him. The veteran knows he needs to buy time for the others to escape, even if it's just for a minute. Or even for one more second as the monster attacks him with a powerful spinning blow. Suddenly, a very bright light shines in the area, and a powerful attack hits the monster's arm. Seol arrives in time and tells the senior that he did a good job protecting everyone there. The veteran is then completely shocked to see that the rookie has appeared to save them from danger. With an energy sphere in his hand, the hero tells him to leave the rest of the job for him to handle. The system then asks if he wants to enter the labyrinth, and everything is sucked into the portal. Already inside his dimension, the protagonist thinks it was pretty cool to drag the monster in there. But now he shouts for the creature to stop getting so close because it's stronger than he thought. He then wonders if that steel orc had really just fought against the Overcross Guild. The young hunter has never seen anyone destroy his labyrinth's walls like that before. With that, he realizes it will be very difficult to face a high-level orc alone in this situation. In that case, he says he'll give the creature a gift and creates a blue energy sphere. With that, the energy sphere flies through the labyrinth's corridors at high speed to attack. Suddenly, all his monsters appear and attack the steel orc all at once with everything they have. He then prepares to attack while the beast is distracted, looking for a gap in its defense. But the steel orc roars with great force and releases a large wave of red energy in the area. The creature then destroys one of the monsters, and the young man is shocked by so much power and raw strength. He gets furious because he had just fixed the labyrinth, and the orc has already destroyed everything again. He realizes it's hard to create an opening and thinks about using a much riskier plan now. Therefore, he decides he will have to call a much more powerful monster for the great battle. The steel orc then faces the new enemy that has emerged to challenge it in a battle of giants. This is the labyrinth's boss, a huge and frightening creature named Ziziori, the strongest. The labyrinth boss then roars with all its might and prepares to attack the large invader. With a powerful punch, the creature hits the steel orc head on with great brutality and force. With the boss's distraction, he finally manages to find an opening for his final attack. He then charges forward and attacks the orca's arm with his red energy spear right in its blind spot. The giant monster then roars in pain from the surprise attack of the young hunter inside the labyrinth. At that, the labyrinth boss seizes the chance and grabs the orc's head with its sharp claws. And without mercy, the monster crushes the steel orc's head with its hands to end the fight. The system announces that the boss has been defeated and that monster respawning has been disabled. The protagonist is furious because, due to the orc, his labyrinth's boss was defeated in the fight. Kicking the ground, he shouts that the boss that cost him so much has been reduced to nothing. Looking at the now empty labyrinth, he prepares for the next phase of his grand plan. A system window then announces that the steel rain trap has been activated by the user. With that, several metal spears begin to fall from the ceiling at high speed in the dark corridor. The giant creature is then hit head-on by the spears that fall non-stop from the ceiling. Even with the trap's attack, he prepares to strike the monster with his energy spear. With his eyes glowing gold, he shouts that he will deliver one more blow to end it all. Then, with a powerful strike, he hits the steel orc head on with his blue energy weapon. Another system window announces that the spike ceiling trap has also been activated by him. With that, the labyrinth floor is filled with defeated enemies, and the young man observes the grand scene. He comments that he installed a set of traps as a precaution, and now he's seeing the result. With the labyrinth floor completely destroyed, he realizes his plan worked perfectly in the end. A system window then appears in front of him, showing the current status of his labyrinth. The notice informs that the location's durability is at 72% and the orc is still alive. With his monsters supporting him, he admits it would have been very difficult without the help of his labyrinth. Suddenly, the steel orc gets up again and prepares to attack with even more force. It strikes one of the monsters, and the protagonist is surprised by the giant creature's resilience. With a loud roar, the monster once again unleashes its great and powerful red energy aura. The system then announces that the steel orc has entered a berserk state and is much stronger. The protagonist says the place is about to collapse and that it should be quiet outside by now. With that, he opens a large blue energy portal and prepares to take the battle outside. He then tells the monster that they will finish this fight outside the labyrinth. Outside, the veteran notices that all the students have been evacuated but can't find the rookie. Suddenly, a large energy portal opens right in the middle of the destroyed dojo's courtyard. The veteran is completely shocked to see the mana appearing out of nowhere right in front of him. He then gets scared by the appearance and doesn't understand what that mysterious blue energy is. The protagonist then steps out of the portal, and the great battle against the monster resumes in the dojo. The steel orc roars with great force and attacks the young hunter with its red stone arms. The hero manages to block the attack with his spear, and the force of the impact greatly impresses him. He wonders if he's managing to fight on equal terms, because the orc is exhausted from the fight. But he realizes that, in fact, the monster's attacks are even stronger than before. With a smile on his face, he realizes that his body is different from what it used to be. The 2 weeks of intense training in the master's dojo were not in vain and have paid off. Even though he feels his body could break at any moment, he feels a great power emerging. And more than anything, he can feel the results of his training firsthand now. With that, his energy spear transforms into a glowing red sword of light for the fight. The young man then charges forward and attacks the steel orc with his new weapon in a powerful strike. The monster is hit squarely in the face and feels the impact of the young hunter's attack in the dojo. With a smile on his face, the protagonist comments that this battle is really a lot of fun. He then prepares and attacks the creature once more with his glowing red energy sword. The monster is hit head-on again, and one of its teeth is broken by the force of the blow. Surrounded by an electric aura, the protagonist asks the beast if the fight is being fun. The hero then uses the handle of his weapon to block a powerful punch from the giant steel orc. But the creature uses its other hand and attacks him with a spinning blow to throw him away. With the strong impact, the young man is thrown to the ground, and the monster takes the chance to attack. He flies through the air and slams into one of the dojo buildings, breaking everything in his path. On the ground, he wonders if the orcs thought it couldn't pierce his skin without a weapon. The young hunter gets up, slightly injured, and the creature digs its own claw into the ground. The steel orc then charges towards the protagonist to end the fight for good. Suddenly, a white blade flies by at high speed toward the giant monster. The veteran then lands a powerful kick to the creature's face to help his new friend. He shouts that he will buy time for the young man and tells him to grab a weapon so they can fight. But the monster retaliates and lands a strong punch on the disciple, sending him flying with the impact. Badly injured, the veteran screams in pain as he flies through the air from the force of the orc's blow. The protagonist, however, grabs the creature's head to distract it while the other recovers. And with a loud shout, he announces that he has already gotten a weapon and prepares for the final attack. With that, he lands a white energy punch right in the monster's face with all his might. He says that now that the orc's mind is confused, this is his big chance to win the fight. With that, he decides he will detonate all the remaining energy in his body for the final blow. The young man then enters the monster's mouth and prepares to unleash everything from inside the creature. The scene then shifts, and the steel orc's head begins to glow with an intense red light. With the monster defeated, the protagonist gives thanks, because thanks to it, he can move on to the next training. Bleeding a little, he wipes his face and prepares for what's to come next in the dojo. Amidst all the destruction, the veteran lying on the ground hears a voice calling him to wake up. He then remembers the voice of the person who saved him in the past and inspired him to be a hero. The young man realizes it's the same person and opens his eyes to see the young hunter in front of him. The protagonist says he has finally woken up and comments that he is very resilient to have survived. Suddenly, the weapon master appears and, with a quick strike, ends the monster's life on the ground. The old man then throws the orc's head away, finishing off the creature that was still alive. The scene ends with the protagonist receiving a unique, level demonic dagger as a reward. Lying on the ground, the veteran silently says that it was he who saved him that time in the past. The protagonist says there was no one else to take care of him there, and tells him to lie down. With the steel orc defeated, he announces that everything is over now and the senior can rest. The next day at the Management Bureau headquarters, the atmosphere is very busy and crowded. Reporters and onlookers gather in front of the building to cover the big scandal of the moment. One of the cameramen then announces that the person they were waiting for has finally appeared. Director Baek Jung-won of the Overcross Guild then arrives and is surrounded by reporters on the scene. Everyone asks him to say a few words about the illegal monster transport incident. He then stops and says that first, he would like to apologize to all the victims of the accident. But he lies and says the orc was valuable and they only brought it to donate to the research bureau. With a fake smile, he says he can't say anything more and that he will cooperate with the investigation. Suddenly, one of the reporters spots the protagonist and points to him in the middle of the crowd. They ask how he managed to defeat the orc even though he is only a D-rank hunter. Being carried by a colleague, he apologizes and says he needs to go to work and will give the interview later. But one of the reporters questions him about the bureau's response, which he thinks was flawed. The man says the bureau should monitor the guilds and that it also bears responsibility in the case. The protagonist's colleague tells him to ignore the man because he just wants to cause trouble on TV. He explains that the reporter must be paid by a guild to post biased content on the internet. With a smile on his face, the young man thinks that they are using every dirty trick possible. He then tells his friend he'll be right back and approaches the reporter for a little chat. The young hunter asks if the broadcast is live and the man confirms, a bit confused. He then explains that he wants people to hear what he has to say in real time for everyone. With his eyes glowing gold, he shouts if it's nice to be paid to clean up others' messes. He points to the guild director and says they do whatever they want, and the bureau foots the bill. At the young man's shout, all the reporters fall silent, not knowing how to react to the situation. With a smile on his face, he then asks director directly if that is right. The old man just stares at him with a smile and a look of contempt, without saying a single word. Suddenly, the protagonist's colleague grabs him by the hair and drags him away from the reporters. He apologizes and says the young man is not well as he takes him inside the bureau building. The director then asks if that was the guy who talked back to him before, and his assistant confirms it. The old man comments that it's true what they say about a pup that doesn't fear a tiger and calls the section chief. With a furious look and a red aura, he then orders his subordinate to crush that wretch. The scene then shifts to a well-lit and modern conference room for an important meeting. Someone then shows a YouTube video that was posted the previous day with a man in glasses. The presenter explains that from that video, various media outlets began posting about Seo Yol. The rescue team manager becomes concerned and admits that a member made an inappropriate comment. He argues that the large guild is to blame and that the videos were manipulated to look worse. Another man, however, says it doesn't matter if they were manipulated or not because everyone is talking about it. This man is Hein-ji Hayek, the chief of the surveillance division, and he says the young man must be punished. The manager retorts that Overcross should be punished and questions if they didn't handle the situation poorly. With great anger, the surveillance chief then slams his fist on the table with all his might. He shouts at the other man and asks if he has gone crazy to talk like that. An older man then intervenes and tells the two to stop arguing at that moment. The manager then mentions that Seo Yol's rescue rate was 100%, and the other confirms it. The older man says this makes him a valuable asset and that they need to maintain the bureau's authority. The surveillance chief then glares at him and asks if he happens to have another plan in mind. The man says that since they made an interesting move, the bureau needs to respond in kind now. This man is Park Gwang-soo, the director of the management bureau, the boss of everyone present. The scene then shifts to an empty, well-lit corridor of the large Hunter Bureau building. Someone then knocks on the wooden door of one of the offices for an important meeting with the boss. The protagonist then opens the door and peeks into the room after hearing someone call him. He enters the office and asks the director if he called him for this private conversation. With a calm look, the bureau director then asks the young hunter to sit down for a talk. The older man says he has something very important to discuss with the young man at that moment. A cup of hot tea is then served on the table for the young hunter during their conversation. The director asks what he thought of the tea, and the young man praises it, saying he could open a cafe. With a smile, the man says he is happy to hear that and that he is curious about one thing. He then asks what rank the protagonist thinks he would get if he retook the hunter test. The young man replies that he's not sure, but that it definitely wouldn't be the same rank he is now. The director then says he figured, because lately he has done things a D rank couldn't do. The director says they also went through a tough time, because many places wanted to spread rumors about the young man. With that, the protagonist wonders if the man is telling him to reveal what he's hiding in exchange for help. He then remembers that Director Park is a master politician who has held his position at the bureau for a long time. A memory of his boss advising him to be humble and honest flashes in his mind at that moment. The young man thinks he has followed that advice so far, but he wonders if he can really mention the labyrinth. To his surprise, the director tells him not to worry because he won't ask how he got stronger. The older man then reveals that what matters now is that the administration needs his power. With a serious look, the bureau director then reveals that he is sending him to the country's provinces. The scene then shifts to the outside of the large management bureau building at dusk. A man says the investigation is over and that it was quick thanks to the local surveillance department. Director Bake then asks Chief An what he thinks of Seo Yol, and the man says he doesn't know him well. The old man insists and asks why he cares so much about a simple rescue worker like him. With a malicious smile, he replies that it's because nothing is more annoying than an insect in his sight. Chief An then asks if that's why he kicked him out to the field, and the old man scolds him. With a suspicious look, Director Bake then asks if the two young men are close to each other. Suddenly, Chief An is startled by something, and the guild director looks in the same direction as him. To the surprise of both men, the protagonist was passing through the same corridor at that moment. The old man approaches the young man and says they are truly destined to meet all the time. He then reveals that he heard the news that the young hunter is going to the country's provinces. Surprised, the protagonist asks if the man is stalking him because the transfer notice hasn't even been issued. With a smile, he tells the old man not to worry, as it's just a 6-month deployment. The guild director then squeezes his face tightly and comments that the young man is very positive about it. He says he heard that the administration only sends section chief level hunters or higher there. The hero then says that Chief Ann probably didn't know because he was going to announce it to everyone later. With a smile and a peace sign, he reveals that he was promoted 2 ranks and is the new assistant manager. The 2 men are then completely shocked by the news of the young man's major double promotion. The protagonist then asks if, judging by the old man's face, he isn't happy with his promotion. With a forced smile, the guild director wonders if the administration promotes people on a whim. The young man then replies that it means they don't want to lose talent and that he must be annoyed. With that, the 2 stare at each other, their auras of power clashing in the middle of the building's corridor. Chief Ann then intervenes in the argument and asks what the 2 are doing in the middle of the corridor. The guild director apologizes and says he just got distracted for a second by the whole situation. With that, the old man turns and walks away with his colleague, while the protagonist just watches them. But before leaving, Director Bake turns to the young man and asks if he wants a little advice. He then warns that trying to drag him elsewhere was a big mistake on the Bureau's part. But the young man says it doesn't matter where they send him, because his priority as an agent will never change. The guild director then continues on his way down the corridor with Chief Ann by his side. Suddenly, Chief Ann is startled by something and asks what the guild director is doing. Completely enraged, the old man punches the wall with all his strength and power. With the strong impact, the corridor wall cracks, and pieces of concrete fly everywhere. With a look of pure hatred, he shouts and calls the Bureau members cursed insects. The scene then returns to the office of the Management Bureau Director, the powerful Park Kwang-suk. He is alone in his office, drinking a cup of tea while looking at the city through the window. The man tells the young man not to worry because it's just a 6-month deployment. He then explains that the young hunter needs to show results so that no one can touch him. The protagonist and the Bureau Director then stare at each other in silence for a moment in the room. The older man then notices that the young man seems to have something on his mind and asks what it is. With that, the protagonist thanks him for the help, but says he would like to ask one last thing. With a smile, he asks that since he has got another place, it should be one that needs his help. The director then drinks his tea and thinks that the young man is really different from all the others. Looking at the city through the window, he wonders if the young hunter is truly something special and unique. The scene then shifts to the rescue department's corridor, which is very quiet and empty at the moment. One of the young man's colleagues then shouts in shock, asking if that's even possible and how he got the promotion. The section manager then arrives, and the other young man asks if he knew about the promotion and transfer. The older man then replies that as the section chief, of course he already knew everything. With that, the protagonist's colleague stands up worried and asks how they will work without him. The manager then tells him to call the young man and ask if he's coming to the team dinner tonight. The young hunter then answers the call and asks his friend what he is doing at the moment. The scene then shifts to a dark forest, and the protagonist says he is doing his homework. Wearing a military uniform, he answers the call and says he is cleaning out a giant wasp nest. With that, the young man hangs up the phone on his friend and tells him to call back later. With only 3 days left until the mission's end, he thinks he got there quickly, but the situation is different. With his energy spear in hand, he sees that the wasps are already producing troops for the battle. But the hero says it doesn't matter as long as he can still move, and he prepares to fight. With a great leap, he charges towards the swarm of wasps with his energy weapon. His eyes glow with power as blue energy bolts surround his body for the big attack. Suddenly, several projectile-shaped creatures fly at high speed toward the hunter. He then uses his spear to defend himself from the swift attacks of the new monsters that have appeared. Surprised, the protagonist wonders if the queen was also capable of creating these new creatures. He then identifies them as swift bees, a special type of very fast insect monster. Their stingers are like bullets, and he wonders if they were made in advance for the fight. The young man knows that if the fight drags on, he will be surrounded, so he prepares an energy portal. Before that happens, however, he jumps with full force into the black hole he created himself. The Wasp Queen is then startled by the appearance of the portal and by the young hunter's strategy. He thinks he can handle the numbers by using the labyrinth's traps and unleashes a blast. With the spear unbalancing the wasp, he needs to reach the nest to finish the mission. The Great Wasp Queen then appears amidst the flames and prepares for the big battle. The hero then dodges the creatures and continues on his way toward the great monster nest. With agility, he passes by all the insects and gets closer and closer to his final objective. Suddenly, the wasp's behavior changes, and they cling to the ground to avoid being sucked in. With this, he realizes that between the bees and the new tactic, the queen has been watching him for a while. The large and frightening wasp queen then glares at the protagonist with a look of pure hatred. With a small smile, he feels honored that she is using what's left of her brain to stop him. The scene then shifts to a room, and the young man says he also came up with a plan to win the fight. Since he can't revive the monsters, he needs to use the remaining 11 for his new strategy. With a portal in his hands, he says this is the only plan he has to win the battle. The system then announces that he is entering the labyrinth, and his monsters attack the wasp with everything they've got. His plan is to place the minimum number of monsters in the labyrinth to distract the creatures. And after doing that, he leaves the labyrinth and lets his monsters fight against the swarm. With that, the protagonist jumps toward the large explosion he created for the final phase of the plan. With a determined smile, he says he will use the spear to finish the mission once and for all. With that, the young hunter dives with full force into the large energy explosion he created on the spot. The young man then lands safely in the middle of all the destruction he caused with his attack. With his spear in hand, he challenges the queen and asks why she doesn't stop hiding and come out to fight. The great wasp queen then finally appears and glares at the protagonist with a look of pure hatred. The creature then uses its power, and the name of the ability is Queen's Scepter, a powerful technique. The hero remains silent for a moment and just observes what the great queen is doing in the nest. He notices that her pheromones have intensified and wonders if she is trying to call the wasps back. Suddenly, the protagonist flies to the side and dodges a surprise attack that came out of nowhere. His sixth sense activates, and the system warns him of the danger as a creature attacks him from behind with full force. With a smile, he realizes she wasn't calling the wasps, but her ultimate weapon for the fight. The creature then appears, and its name is Winglash, the strongest guardian of the entire queen's hive. The young man realizes she is on the defensive for having summoned her most powerful minion for the battle. He then says that the fact she summoned the creature means the end of the battle is near. With that, he creates a portal and says that if the monster disappears, defeating the queen will be much easier. The large blue creature then glares at the protagonist with its red eyes glowing with intense anger. The monster then charges at high speed and tries to get sucked into the young hunter's portal. He then thinks that if he can take down the queen, the mission will finally come to an end here. Suddenly, the creature attacks him, and the hero prepares for the confrontation against the powerful guardian. With his spear, he defends against the blow, and the two clash with great force in the middle of the nest. A large explosion of purple energy occurs with the impact of the two warriors' weapons. The monster then manages to escape the portal, and the protagonist holds it back with his energy spear. With a sweaty face, he wonders how the wretch managed to escape his powerful ability. He is then shocked to see that the monster cut off its own arm to escape the portal. But even so, he realizes that the creature's wings are very strong and they attack him with full force. The hero is then hit head-on by the monster's blow and flies through the air from the force of the impact. With that, the young man says the two are making things very annoying for him in this battle. But he warns that no matter how much they fight, nothing will change the outcome of the fight in the end. With that, he opens a large portal and sucks both monsters into his own labyrinth. Inside his dimension, the final battle against the queen and her guardian is finally about to begin. The hero says the plan changed a bit, but it's not so bad since they are now on his turf. He then warns the guardian monster not to move recklessly if he were in its shoes right now. With a smile, the young man reveals that he has restructured the labyrinth and prepared everything for their arrival. He calls himself crazy for talking to monsters and activates a holographic panel for his grand plan. With one finger, he points to the map and activates several traps scattered throughout the labyrinth. The system announces that the steel rain trap has been activated, and the monster is caught by surprise. But the creature uses its wings to dodge the spears and protect itself and the queen from the attack. The protagonist admits that the monster's name is no joke, as it protected everyone with a single wing. However, the young hunter warns that the arrows are not coming from just one direction. With that, the guardian is hit by several other traps and is engulfed in flames from the explosion. The hero then approaches the queen and says he warned her that nothing would change no matter how much she fought. He reveals that he filled the place with traps to deal with both of them, and the queen is defeated in the process. With the ultimate weapon out of commission, the great wasp queen glares at the hunter with her red eyes. With a smile on his face, he then asks if it's finally just the two of them for the grand final battle.